Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope, a podcast about business, well-being and chocolate.
Hello and welcome to our latest episode of Hope and Patience. It's fab to have you here. A quick question for you to start off today's episode with. What are your thoughts on social media? Love it, loathe it, feel neutral about it, or perhaps like me, all three at times? There's so much to keep up to speed with, and don't even get me started on being a sleuth with understanding the algorithms. So, any idea what our guest today is an expert of? Well, our guest describes himself as a geek. I would say he's a visionary. At the age of 7, he was writing code on his Amstrad. An Amstrad computer shows you how many years ago it was. And in 2006, he'd created the entry on Wikipedia for social media before most of us had an inkling what it was all about or the implosion it was likely to cause. And today, he is founder and CEO of a communications agency which is ranked as the best social media agency and best specialist communications agency in the UK. Clients include the big shots, many of whom remain confidential. He also lectures at the American University of Paris and has given a TED Talk X on understanding the world of trolls and bots. The agency has notched up numerous awards, including the Drum, PRCA, UK Social Media, PR Weekly, and most recently, PR Week, UK Power Week 2021, which they've won consecutively over the last 3 years. He leads a team of 75 who are spread across Asia, the Middle East, the Americas and Europe, and is midst a recruitment drive as we speak. Oh, and if you've got Alexa, you can ask her the latest social media update from his team. So time to introduce our guest, Drew Benvie, founder and CEO of Battenhall. Hello and welcome to H&P. Drew.
Hello, Amelia. How are you? Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here. And as I was saying, when I was quickly chatting to Drew before we press record, I had pages and pages of questions and I've had to rule them out with red pen so that we keep in our time slot. But anyway, let's kick off. So Drew, you launched Battenhall in 2013 very much as a new kind of agency built around the social media economy. Can you share with us a whistle-stop tour of reaching the point of creating Battenhall?
Oh, absolutely. Wow. This is fun. Trip down memory lane. Well, I had been working in the communications industry, mainly public relations, reputation management, things like that, since the late 90s. So I emerged in the world of work, fresh out of university, not really sure what kind of path I was going to carve, and kind of just landed in public relations. I worked to begin with at the university where I studied, which is Cardiff University. And then there was a careers fair for technology companies, which I was involved in. I just got chatting to one of the attendees there, one of the exhibitors, a software company. Back then, this is like 1999, weren't many high-profile software companies, and this actually certainly wasn't one. But all of a sudden, my career took a turn into digital and technology, and really never looked back since. I worked at a string of different fascinating places, from technology companies to advertising agencies to PR firms. And in the run up to 2013, in the period between figuring out that social media was a thing, that was like back in 2006 roughly, and now I suppose, I just kept fiddling around with new technologies, social networks, code, things like that. I think you could probably call me an accidental early adopter of all these things. And there just came a point where more and more people were saying to me, you need to set up your own firm that does this mixture of social media and marketing, advertising, communications, whatever you might call it. And Battenhall was born.
So you've always had that sort of interest in tech and social media from the early days?
Always, yes. Amstrad CPC 464 was bought for me Christmas. I think it was I was probably about 6-7 years old. I really just wanted to play games, to be honest. That don't all 7-year-old boys. But yeah, there was this booklet that taught you how to code a little stick person that runs from right to left across the screen. So I tried my hand at it, and ever since then, whenever I had a computer, as well as playing the obligatory games, I would try my hand at code. And I realised when I started working in the PR industry, the PR people aren't technical. And so my inner geekery came into its own when technology became, I suppose, a valuable skill to have in a business. And I think my fascination with it has paid off now, because it is useful, and it's enabled us to really create a business that mixes the creative communications arts, advertising, marketing, ideas, networking with the technology side of things. So I still tinker around with code every now and again, but I do largely leave it to the professionals.
And just when the time was ripe. So are your parents, are they into tech?
Well, yeah, this is partly why I called the company Battenhall as well. So I grew up in a place called Battenhall.
Oh, wow.
It's a suburb of a city, actually, rather than an actual place. But it's really harking back to my upbringing. My father was an engineer, mechanical engineer, and my mother, I would say, very entrepreneurial. An immigrant, moved from Spain in the 1960s to the UK, and I grew up in this household where they both worked in a factory their whole lives, incredibly hardworking, but both entrepreneurial and technical. There was always machinery and nuts and bolts outside or in our shed, where I'd go and imagine I was in the A-team. I don't know if you remember this from like the 80s and the 90s, and they'd get locked in a shed and build this contraption that would enable them to escape. And I whether it's spanners, wrenches, and soldering irons, or software on a computer, I have actually always been fascinated, and I have my parents to thank for that. That's one of the reasons why Battenhall was named after, well, for me anyway, memories of growing up.
So does your work ethic stem largely to your parents?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an entrepreneur setting up my own business. I think if you were to ask my colleagues things about me, one of the things I've heard them say is that I do work pretty hard. I just think you've got to put in all of your effort into work. And if you love your work, as they say, you'll never work a day in your life. But I have very much had instilled from me, led by example from my parents, that you need to work hard if you're going to make a success of anything.
And would you have visualised yourself running the company that you're running, let's say when you were at school? Is this a sort of dream that you followed?
Absolutely not. Well, not running a company. I never had this, I suppose, a vision of running things when I was younger. I was always a team player, active in sports, and at school we used to do these young enterprise schemes where you'd create a product, but I was never yearning to be the boss. I always fancied myself, I suppose, as a bit of a technician. I suppose that's where this fascination in tech comes from, helping the team. But I think when an opportunity like social media comes along, and you do find yourself as one of the first people to try this, or one of the first people to have done that, and you get recognized for it, there is an opportunity to lead by example. I would say that's probably the way that I work. I do try to lead by example, and that's why I enjoy building the Battenhall business to what it is today.
What has been the biggest change you've seen with social media and your clients' attitude to it since you've launched Battenhall?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, change is constant. That's probably the main thing. We launched the company in 2013 when social media was relatively well established. Most of the big social networks then are the same now. It was Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and this was an opportunity for us to help companies. We're a consulting business, so we help companies to do their job by being specialists. So rather than just being like rent a help, actually we're trying to be very good at what we do. We strive to be the best at what we do, and so the opportunity back then is relatively similar to how it is now. Be very, very good at the things that most companies will struggle to be the best at, and they want help. That's constant. Most of the social networks are constant, but change is also constant, and so we've always tried to keep one foot, this is kind of like a motto that we have, one foot firmly planted in the present, but one in the future, and that's constantly changing. And over the last 12 months especially, there's just been so much innovation in the social media and the technology space, new types of technologies to help us live our lives, navigate through the world of work. And so that foot in the future, I find really exciting. But we mustn't forget the mainstream, the here and now. And mixing those two things up, that's kind of what keeps us busy every day.
It certainly does. I find it enormous. It's like a tsunami every day. It's like, oh, crikey. How quick were the larger corporates to realise that social media would be a key part to brand awareness, consumer engagement and tal, and an important vehicle for them to invest in with marketing and manpower, and not just a passing fad?
It tends to be something happens that affects them, then they take it seriously. That's what I found since the beginning. That point I said earlier, that it often takes a problem. That would usually be the catalyst. Something goes wrong. A brand gets affected in some kind of negative way, maybe product failure, maybe some kind of a catastrophe. And all of a sudden it's all hands to the pump, and then they can see the opportunity, and it goes from there.
I mean, social media now heavily influences business models and plans when it comes to marketing budgets and recruitment. Do you see something else as big as social media being created which will influence marketing and recruitment as much?
It's continually evolving. You might not call it social media forever. It's kind of why we don't solely focus on it. I mean, back at base, where we do our work, the actual work we do ranges from designing, animation, advertising. We still do a relatively large amount of reputation management and PR. So social media is influential in all of that. But we're also finding the way that social networks have evolved, there's this breadth of what you can do, and there's an utter depth as well. And the breadth, for example, would be a social network allowing you to create private groups. Now, that you can do on WhatsApp, you can also do on Facebook, but it's called dark social media that if you're not in the group, you can't see. That's a big trend. And often it's not social media, it's messaging. So I think a great example of a messaging app campaign that I've seen in the last year, wasn't involved in this in any way, but the World Health Organization released a COVID bot. So you could send a message via WhatsApp to the World Health Organization with questions about COVID, like facts and figures, that kind of thing. And it will instantly text you back info that it's retrieved from its archives. Now that I think is a great example. It's not really social media, but it's very closely linked. And that's an example of how the future might not be social. It might be something a bit more private. And privacy is a big trend as well. I think we're all a bit, concerned about what might be out there on the internet about us. Future generations certainly are. But that kind of evolution is constant, and it's going in a lot of different directions.
And going to COVID and the whole world of the pandemic, what has the pandemic shown you about Battenhall? How have you been affected by the pandemic?
I think everybody will have felt an almost instant punch in the gut when it first started, because the world changes, work changes, and everybody's customers change in some way as well. So for us, we could see it coming. Everybody could see something coming. Not quite sure. We couldn't see it as it turned out, obviously. But we're keeping a very close eye on it, because we've got clients all over the world, in particular in America, in particular big technology companies who are very progressive when it comes to ways of work, digital first, things like that. So we've actually always embraced what we call total flexible working now, but things like you can work from home when you want, you can shift your hours. Everyone's got a big technology allowance so that they can afford technology that can enable them to work flexibly. We had some customers in industries that didn't fare so well, industries that you can't just work from home, like travel and leisure. And not too many. We are lucky enough, do feel very fortunate, but our work is across all industries and it's all over the world. So in a way, we were kind of insulated from any one, I suppose, industry or type of customer, to reduce the amount of work it needed from a team like us. But it did happen. And within the first few weeks, things slowed down a little. But we were fortunate enough to also be doing some work with NHS England at the time. And as a company, we decided to offer NHS England, the part of the NHS that we're working with, a chunk of our time. So we volunteered for the NHS and we started working with them to do coronavirus safety campaigns. And anybody can look them up, but the Battenhall NHS COVID campaigns. We started doing some work in Instagram, TikTok, working with some high-profile individuals, and it actually ended up winning awards. And before long, any spare capacity that we had in our team, we didn't do furlough, by the way. We retained all staff, and any spare capacity we had, we just pumped into valuable causes, such as what we did for NHS England. But we do digital work and social media work, and there was still a lot of demand for it. And within weeks, we were full and we started hiring again. And we've nearly doubled in size in the last year as a result of
That's incredible.
Well, I mean, we are very fortunate. Digital capable teams doing digital first work is kind of what we do. So we do feel very fortunate that we've been busy and we've had a lot to do. What's tough now, Amelia, is hiring on lockdown, where you don't see people, you don't meet people, and creating a teamwork ethic when nobody's in the same place anymore.
And how are you managing? How are you managing to do that?
Well, lots of little things. We try to create the office ways of work in a virtual world. So we have coffee mornings to replicate the when you walk into an office, have a chat with some colleagues. So every morning, it's optional. You can join this video chat that we have. I'm conscious that when work is busy and you can't visibly see the office being empty before 9 or emptying after 5:30, there is a tendency to just work a bit longer as well, especially when you're super busy. So we're keeping a really close eye on people's well-being at work, trying to prevent burnout, to be frank. When people are busy, they can just work longer and longer and longer, and in a virtual world there's no visible boundaries between clients in another country who are still working and us, or people starting to log on and starting to log off. So it's just generally being there for one another, but using every digital technology we have at our disposal to create those downtime opportunities to catch up and foster teamwork that we can.
Downtime, I think, is the real challenge, isn't it? It is so easy, as you were saying, just to keep plugged in and working away. And you can get up at 6 and get on at 6:30, and you can still find yourself still working away at 6:30. I think that's one of the disciplines that people are learning, is to say, you know what, stop, I'm going for my walk, or I'm going to do my Pilates or F45 or whatever it is, to sort of break up the day.
There is a tendency to just, I think we all do it sometimes, just to get ahead. Oh, I'll just do this one extra thing because I'll be a step ahead tomorrow. But it just keeps going. It keeps going. So we have to be aware of that and aware of the effects that it could have. Before lockdown, we employed a full-time and permanent qualified health and well-being coach, and she is our head of people and culture. And in the beginning, her job was mixed with operations, things like looking after the office and finances. But over the last year, Jenny's been completely dedicated to ensuring that people are well looked after.
Drew, with so many distractions, how do you optimize productivity?
I'm pretty old school. I write lists in books and mix that up with the online to-do lists that are shared with colleagues, but focus on lists. Before I took my first boss job many years ago, I read a review about a book and how it would enable you to be this a superhero at productivity. It's called Getting Things Done by Dave Allen, and I've still got the book today. It's on the bookshelf behind me, and it's all about how to keep one list, not many. One list of the things that you need to do ensures that your brain is focused and it's clear. When you don't have a list, or when your lists are in lots of different places, or like I used to do, you use your email inbox as a list, then it becomes quite stressful and you can't focus on what needs to be done next. So I keep little lists, write them in pen and on paper, tick things off as I go through them. I sometimes do that thing that we all do as well, as like you've done something that wasn't on the list, so then you write it in and then you tick it off. Yes. But I just find that process a bit like trying to remember things. If I write it down with a pen on paper, I actually properly remember it. So I think, that's one of my tips. But it is hard when there's so much information flying around. But I go old school.
It's very therapeutic, I think, to have lists. Now, Drew has the most incredible, this is a quick aside, newsletter called The Social Media Report that is now my go-to every week. And basically, one of the latest apps to be launched that I heard about was through Drew's newsletter, and it is the audio chat app Clubhouse. Now, Drew, you were mentioned in the New York Times as being the first company to recruit a Clubhouse exec. That seems a big commitment and investment for a relatively new app, which is still in beta testing and only available on iPhone at this stage. How measured are you when it comes to getting involved and committing to new social media apps being launched? And what is it about Clubhouse that has got you to make this big commitment?
Yeah, I find this one quite exciting. When I was at university, I got involved in student media, specifically radio. And so I've always had a fascination with the broadcasting, podcasting, radio space. And so when Clubhouse emerged, and I thought, why hasn't audio social ever been done well before? And it's only a year old, the app Clubhouse, which is, for those who've not yet tried it, it's effectively a live chat where you can host a show with a number of different people, or you can do it yourself. Anybody can listen in. You can make it private if you want, but it's done open. And if you were to just open up the app and you're not willing to speak and you just want to listen, you can surf through different chats. You can listen, and if you want, speak. And the serendipity of it really got me hooked. I'd been watching it closely throughout the last year, but properly got involved in early January when I could see the user base just taking off. And I was hosting shows, I was speaking to people I would never have had an opportunity to speak to before, quite high profile individuals. And I just thought there's something in this. And quite quickly, clients of ours started asking us if we could help them. And there's a team of us here at Battenhall who were doing similar things to myself, getting involved. And we were hiring at all levels because we're quite busy. And we just thought it made sense for us to put Clubhouse skills in the job description for one of the future applicants. And then one thing led to another, and we called the role a Clubhouse executive, which is just a slight tweak on a normal job title for us here at Battenhall. A client executive or an account executive is a relatively standard role. So we went for Clubhouse executive, and it just got noticed. It got picked up by the New York Times, who referenced it a couple of times, actually, and I got interviewed by a few journalists that were interested in this job title being a thing. And the reason we did it, not only was there demand, and there still is demand, but what we wanted to do is ensure that whoever we hired had the skills to be able to transfer across to other audio social, were that to become a thing, which it quickly is. So Clubhouse is standalone. It's not owned by another social network, but Twitter has already launched a Clubhouse clone. It's called Twitter Spaces. Tencent, which is the Chinese, it's like the Chinese Facebook, it owns WeChat and QQ, amongst other things. It's already built a clone, so we should see. And actually, a lot of Chinese firms like Tencent, Capital Coffee is a clone, which is a standalone clone, which has been built in China. Telegram as well has set up audio chats. Everyone's copying Clubhouse. And we're pretty busy here at Battenhall doing Clubhouse-specific work for clients. In the future, I'm sure it will just expand to all parts of audio social. And I've had members of parliament and journalists join in the shows that I was putting on. That serendipity has really created something quite special in social media. And whether Clubhouse is here to stay or not, audio social, I would say, definitely is. And it's creating this white space between the mainstream social networks and what they've been doing over the last 15 years, 16 years, and other types of audio, from podcasts to radio and music. I'm finding I'm consuming more social media and I'm listening to more stuff because of what Clubhouse has done. So it's not really cannibalizing anything else, it's complementing, which I think is really quite special.
Yeah, Clubhouse, I love. So thank you so much for flagging that up, because you meet so many people, you learn so much, and it's just a fantastic way to connect. I wonder if it will take a bit away from LinkedIn, which is quite sort of flat compared to the audio social, or maybe LinkedIn will bring it in too.
Well, this is it. I think that it shouldn't be too long before LinkedIn is considering creating an audio version where you've got the community ready-made there. Clubhouse is still really small. I think at the most recent count, only around about 10 million users. You look at something like Facebook, for example, 2.7 billion users. So it's huge. So if one of the bigger social networks nails audio groups, which is essentially what Clubhouse is, then it's going to have a fight in its hand, because the community is everything.
I'm going to ask you a question that I don't know if you can answer, but I'm interested to know about. How does our reliance and heavy usage of social media, and therefore energy consumption, sit with supporting climate change?
Yeah, this is a tough one. There's a lot being said about how technology in general is a drain on the planet. It's something that has been brought to light quite recently. It's been pretty high profile with regard to digital currency. So in particular, the use of
Bitcoin.
or just the existence of Bitcoin and its impact on the planet. But then further down the line, you've got this new issue, which is digital content, which is unique. It might be a plot of land in a virtual world, or it might be a Bitcoin, or it might be a piece of digital art. These are known as NFTs, non-fungible tokens. They're in the press as well quite a lot right now. And these are, for example, pieces of art that only exist online. And they exist in a similar way to how Bitcoin exists. So there is a unique thing somewhere on the internet that needs computers whirring in order to keep it alive, rather than an actual painting hung up in a wall, which does not. So this is increasing. Things that we're doing here, and what I do regularly, we're making sure that we use green energy sources. We're making sure that we're measured in our screen use in general. But there is no escaping that there needs to be balance, and that race for net zero, which all organisations and we as an organisation are very much aware and committed to being balanced, but in reality, we're not the hardest industry to get good at this, because we're just people that tend to work from a laptop. It's not like we're a carbon intense industry. Other industries, however, are. We're actually doing quite a lot of work with some of our clients around getting that message through to employees, through to customers, and inspiring action in the path towards net zero. So I think it's a huge issue, and something that's, I don't think many people wouldn't be bought into as well and committed to bringing about change. But it's about doing it in a way that's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to be pragmatic and realistic that people aren't going to stop using screens. And in fact, screen use might get more intense. So it's about things like improvements in technology or balance in general. So stepping away from your screen, getting out, spending a little bit less time plugged in all the time, and balancing that with green sources of energy as well. So it's a really big issue, and generally one which I think a lot of education is needed as well.
True. What has been your greatest challenge so far, would you say?
Gosh, everything seems like a challenge. Day to day, there's micro challenges. So, there'll be a tough situation and you've got to get through it. It might be, we've had pretty much anything that happens in the world, tough things that involve countries or cities or organizations. We've been involved in some really tough situations. From natural disasters to terror attacks, we've had clients that have been involved and we've tried to help them through some pretty pressured situations. And those can be stressful. But if you come out the other side as a team and you've, done something good in the process, you get through it. I would call those kind of micro stress. So I'm putting this stress and pressure into perspective, absolutely into perspective. But then you've got macro pressures, things like, and for me, I feel like every day you've got an entire team of people, of employees that you've built, and you're taking on a mission, on a journey, and every pressure that they experience is a pressure for you as well. Anything from making sure that we are, getting everybody what they need in order to stay fit and healthy, or just a computer for the new member of staff, which didn't actually or doesn't always happen. I think the pressure of being responsible for an entire team of people, and then for all of the clients that we represent, is a pressure. But if you play as a team and if you work, together, it doesn't feel too pressured most of the time, even though this has been a challenging year.
What skill set would you say that you've needed to be at the helm of Battenhall and to help it grow?
You need to always surround yourself by people that are better than you at things. And that's one thing I learned over the years. You need to make sure you work with people that work well with you and as a team. And so I'm surrounded by hugely talented people, and we do work as a team in order to get things done. You need to be good at the basics of business as well as the thing that you do, that one thing that you do that you're trying to do well, like, for example, social media or marketing or advertising. So the business side of things, making sure that you're running a tight ship is really important. I'm lucky in that respect, in that I have got a business degree, and I've been quite numerate. I've got an A-level in maths, and I did statistics and accounting as part of my business degree. So I've absolutely lent on that. But I think you've always got to take learnings from everything that you experience in life. And that's what I've tried to do, is figure out what was the best and the worst way of everything that I think I'll probably need to experience in building up a company in Battenhall. And I've just tried to apply it there. So, the best of things, for example, one of the things that I've always felt is important is innovation in work. You need to have a bit of time to try something new, to test new stuff. And for a company like ours, that's just the lifeblood of the company. So I thought, right, in the beginning, what can we do to ensure that everybody's got a bit of time and brain space to innovate? And something that I found in all the companies I'd worked at is nobody is ever 100% utilized as a worker. You can't be working 100% of the time. And we used to look at the numbers at my old company, and we'd noticed that if you're totally busy, and this company had timesheets, so got to say exactly what you've done every minute of the day.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of companies in our industry do it. We do a version of it, but it's quite common for a consulting firm, whether you're an accountancy or a PR firm. You record the time that you've done, and then you tally it up at the end of the month to make sure that you're doing the appropriate amount of work for the resources that have been set aside. And a busy person is usually 80% utilized, and the other 20% is generally just breaks, training, learning stuff, just a bit of time off. If you use timesheets in a company, it's normally referred to as house time. You shouldn't really account for it, and it's just there. And to make innovation work, to test new stuff in a typical company, you're kind of asking people to do something in that 20% of their time, or to reduce the other 80%. And I just kind of thought, what if we turn this on its head and take that 20% and just encourage people to experiment, to innovate? And if we do it from day one and it's part of the mantra, it should be relatively straightforward. Some people dedicate it to charitable causes, worthwhile causes of some kind. Others do stuff like learn to code, learn a language. They get involved in projects as groups. That, from the very beginning, has been, I think, one of the most important things for us, because it's enabled us to test out Clubhouse before a client was asking us to and still have the time, or learn to code so that we can build better gizmos like Alexa bots. But I think what's been quite transformative for us as a business is just the amount of work for good causes that we've been able to do, where the cause itself did not have the resources available to hire a team of people to do what we're able to do. Stuff like that is fundamental to innovation, to the way social media works best in businesses. And therefore, it attracts the kind of people that want to be innovative in work when they see that we're doing stuff like this. It's on our website, how we work. And then the types of customers and clients that like the sound of this tend to come to us. And that has actually helped build our business, because we've attracted people and clients that want that kind of work being done with them, which I just think has been, that I hadn't expected, but it's been absolutely marvellous to see develop over the years.
Yeah, it must be wonderful that they have a similar value system and culture system.
Absolutely.
Do you ever doubt yourself, Drew, at all?
Oh God, all the time, yeah. No, I'm not. I'm certainly not filled with confidence, but you have to just rip the plaster off sometimes and just go for it. And so I was 35 when I set up my first company, so I'm not like a serial entrepreneur or anything like that. To be honest, I'd spent a long time doing this, roughly the same thing, and got a little bit better every year, stuck with it. It's just if there is an opportunity ahead of you, you'll always have doubts. You know, will it make money? Will it be a success? But if you feel like if other people have told you you've proven that the answer to all of those is yes, then it's an absolute no-brainer to just take that next step. So I'm certainly not a leap of faith type of person. Everything has been, I think, pretty measured in terms of decision making for me. So it's just a case of taking things one step at a time.
Drew, you mentioned that you were a Libra, your star sign, which is very much about balance and maintaining balance. How do you cope when the scales are tipped?
That's a good question. I think, I don't know if I'm balanced because I'm a Libra, because I know that it's a scales, or vice versa. I've had it since birth. I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you just have to take learning from everything that you experience. And if the scales are tipped in one direction, you think, right, let's go in the other. You don't want to be too short-termist or reactionary in what you do.
We are heading into the quick fire round before our chocolate break. So optimist or pessimist?
Optimist.
Introvert, extrovert or ambivert?
Extrovert.
Perfectionist or non-perfectionist?
Middle for that one. Perfectionist, but I'm always in a rush, if that makes sense.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Well, have you got little children? How old are your children?
Oh, they're a bit older now, so they're not little, but they're still at school. And ever since they were born, I've coped with less sleep. So I used to be somebody that could fall asleep anywhere and at any time. But now my wife says that my son's a bit like me. I just spring out of bed in the morning and I want to get things done. And I slow down as the day goes on.
Okay, have you got your chocolate ready, Drew?
I have, yes.
Okay, so Drew is taking me and all of us on a peanut butter adventure. I have to say that I've avoided this pack for 50 years. And so when Drew said it, I was like, oh, okay, I've obviously got to try it. I'm not a fan of peanut butter. Anyway, I've bought a bag of the mini unwrapped. So Drew, tell us why we're tucking into this delight.
Well, this is, for me, nostalgic. So I think we have the same dose or package or version of what I have in front of me, which is Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. So, I mean, you said, what's your favourite chocolate? I love all types. I quite like dark chocolate. I like the chocolate with bits in it, like sort of like salted caramel, things like that. But for me, food it invokes memories. And when you eat something that you don't often eat, you think about the first time you ate it or where it came from and things. So I thought about this one. In the old world, I used to travel a bit for work, not loads, but I always enjoyed going to new places. And work has taken me to America quite a lot, where I think Reese's peanut butter cups have been high profile for a long time. And here they're quite niche, they're not everywhere. But I always used to come back with a big bag of them, for me, obviously. No, for my kids and my family and stuff. And there's Reese's peanut butter cups, and there's the other one called Hershey's. Is it Kisses? Hershey's Kisses?
Oh, Kisses, yes.
Those I don't like. They taste like plastic, to my mind.
Well, I'm glad you've opened my mind to them. They're not actually as horrendous as I thought they would be. So what are your thoughts on the words success and failure? What do they mean to you?
I think, well, flip it on its head. Every failure is an opportunity to learn and move forward. And I think that is something that if you're an entrepreneurial type, you've got to see some opportunity in failure. And I think success, you just got to do people proud. I'd like to think that my father's up there looking down on me and my mother could look across from the other side of town and be proud of me, hopefully one day. I'm sure they already are. But that would be success in my eyes, just making people proud.
How wonderful. So on to the well-being side, Drew. I mean, you seem a busy man. I have no idea how you fit in the time for your probably very patient wife and your kids. But how important is incorporating well-being into your day, and do you manage to achieve it?
Oh, it's hugely important. I mean, it's not that hard if you take it seriously. And when we're in the world that we're in, where digital technologies have enabled us to do work from anywhere and work faster and smarter, it isn't too hard to take it easy, take breaks. So I do things like I work flexi time and flexi hours. I've always worked a bit from home. Well, not always, but ever since probably the last 10 years, ever since it became a little bit more normal. Taking little and often breaks in your day is really important. Having rest on a weekly basis, like a weekend, and doing something with your spare time, having a project, that kind of thing is really important. But you've got to take breaks throughout the year, have good holidays, and spend your downtime with your loved ones. And so long as you do that on a daily, on a weekly, and on an annual basis, you just make time and take time. Technology is your friend in doing all of that. Then you can stay balanced, and most importantly, work as part of a team, because otherwise you get swamped and you get problems and you can't talk to anybody about them. And a problem shared is a problem halved and all that kind of thing. So that's how I do it. I'm sure I'm not perfect, and my wife is very tolerant of my addiction to work, but I do feel like I'm pretty balanced as well.
What exercise do you take, Drew? Do you take any physical exercise? I'm thinking you'd say yes.
I'm pretty active, but not hugely active. I used to run a lot. I was a former competitive sprinter, so I used to do the 100 metres.
Really?
11.7 seconds was my personal best when I was a teenager.
Wow.
As a little kid, I ran for the men's team. I was kind of a bit more grown up than most people at my age. And then I went to university and focused a little bit more on the other things than sport. I still did a bit of sport, but and then since then, I like the outdoors. I have a bike. I go for bike rides with my son whenever. Lockdown life for us was it was a lovely experience because I have my family, around. So actually spending a little bit more time with family has been lovely, and everything else has been obviously awful, for what's unfolded for the world around us. But those of us who are fortunate to have our health and our loved ones around us, it has actually been a lovely experience. And so one thing that my son and I would do is at lunch break, we just go for a bike ride. And life's never been like that. I used to get up really early, travel into London, come all the way back home, see my kids that one day a week that I work from home. I'd do the school run and then the weekend, of course, as well. But I've really relished this opportunity to spend more time with them. And I go for walks. Got 2 dogs, so I take little dog walks. I used to go to the gym when gyms were open and safe and all that kind of thing. So I've not done that much in the last year. But I'm certainly no competitive athlete, and I don't run anymore.
What triggers your stress, Drew, and how does it affect you physically, mentally, spiritually?
I think pressures. So I do try to work quite hard to alleviate pressures. And there's many ways we can do it, like seeing what's coming that might trigger a pressure, an argument or a target that's not been hit. And you need quiet time. You need a bit of, count to 10, that kind of thing. And you need people around you that can help. So you just got to talk. I think that's the most important thing. When you don't talk, whether it's to, your other half or colleagues or friends around you, then problems can multiply, can't they? And I think that's so it's really important just to talk, to put things in perspective. I think perspective is really important, and I suppose those are the ways that I cope.
Yeah, the brain can definitely massage things. Something that can start as a small seed, and sort of an hour later, you're having almost hot sweats over it. And it's just it's just allowing the brain to just, well, it is a form of massaging it in a way. Do you have your phone on or off at night?
Off. Well, it's not off. I'm always worried that
it's on silent.
It's on silent. I have that setting where it's automatic from one time of the evening to another time. It doesn't buzz or flash. And I think that's quite important, because being on screens late at night and early in the morning is not good for you, and you don't want your phone going off. I'm always quite worried that something bad will happen to somebody I know that needs help in the middle of the night. It's happened before, and I'm always worried it'll happen again. So I never fully turn off my phone, pretty much never, to be honest.
So, Drew, would you say that you sleep pretty well?
Oh, yes, I think I'm a good sleeper. I find that if you wear yourself out enough, you'll feel tired at the end of the day. I read before bed sometimes, or I'm quite a slow reader when it comes to books, but I've always got about 5 books on the go. I'm pretty terrible at reading. But I kind of read for a living as well, and don't we all? But my profession, there's a lot of writing involved, reading and writing, the written word. So my eyes are always tired towards the end of the day. And because I'm an early bird, not a night owl, then I tend not to stay up too late. And I've now got one of these. It's an Apple Watch. I've got an Apple Watch now, but I always used to, before having one, have technology that helped tell you how you're sleeping.
I've never had an app actually tell me, but I sort of feel that you can, some mornings you wake up and you're really on it. Drew, what music makes you feel good, and what book would you miss if it wasn't on your bookshelf?
Oh, good question. I like a very eclectic mix of types of music. Mm-hmm. If you were to put me on the spot, there is an artist called Ben Folds, and he had a band called Ben Folds 5. I saw him play probably about 10, 15 years ago, and he was last in the UK. So Ben Folds 5 I would miss the most. I don't listen to it all the time, but it's an old one and a goodie. Oldie and a goodie. Books. Do you know what? I've read it a few times, and it's one of my favourites. Mr. Nice by Howard Marks. It's one of the few books that I've read over and over again. It's hilarious. It's about, Howard Marks, I think, reminds me of holidays as well. So a bit like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. It just reminds me of being in nice places, and so I'd probably read it over and over and over again. Still laugh. It's just funny, entertaining. I think not many books manage to nail that.
So, Drew, what advice would you give to anybody who's looking at setting up their own business or running their own business at the moment?
Don't feel like you need to invent something brand new that, I don't know, might make you a quadrillionaire or something like that. Focus on that thing that you feel like you can do really, really well, and you can make a business out of it. That was a piece of advice I'd picked up from endless business books that I've got adorning my shelves, that it's okay to do something a little bit better than how it's currently being done, or maybe in a slightly different way. That's what I've done anyway. I haven't tried to invent anything outrageously new, but rather a tweak on the old version of it, with a focus on quality and care and an eye to the future. And if you put those things together, you could probably find something that you could do that will be useful as a business interest, but also that you'll enjoy and that will keep you going for a good few years.
That's really refreshing advice, especially on this thing that you don't have to create something that just isn't out there, that, as you say, is going to make you mega, mega rich. It's very refreshing to hear you say, just do something, but just do it better.
Yeah, and you don't need to be the best. You should always, I think, strive to be the best, because in my mind anyway, you should be up at the quality end of the spectrum. I've never really felt a drive or a passion to be the cheapest
nor me. I want to be the best, not actually it's not an ego pop. Perhaps it's an internal ego where I just want to be good, at what I do. I want to be really good, and I want to get better and better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always felt that there's merit in both ends of the spectrum existing. But the race to the bottom is not a good thing to be in. I think for your heart and soul. So whilst you might be able to make some money by selling something a bit cheaper than somebody else by doing a great deal, I don't think it would be motivating to me personally. No. And not everybody needs to find the cheapest way of doing something, but rather there's usually a way of showing how you could do something better than somebody else can right now, and that's where I think all the good business ideas where they come from.
Where have you had to have hope and patience, Drew? It can be business, personal life, anywhere.
So here's an example of maybe where hope and patience have become involved. I've got two beautiful kids. It took time for them to start arriving, and you're never quite sure what's going to be around the corner. Little health scares or things like that, and sometimes you just got to hope for the best. And I feel very fortunate that we've got two beautiful and healthy kids. And before they were even around, you just hope and hope and hope for the best. So I'd say family and. Well, patience, I think, the world of business. Things don't happen overnight. You gotta chip away at it, do your absolute very best, and be patient that what you're doing is going to pay off in the long run. Which, at least we're all busy and we're keeping ourselves in business. And myself and my colleagues can at least have that to be proud of, that we're around and we've got something to keep ourselves out of trouble.
So, Drew, finally, where can the listeners find out more about Battenhall, hear your latest, find you at Clubhouse, get the newsletter?
Okay, so battenhall.com, that's BATTENHALL, battenhall.com. It's got links to all of the above. And if you just Google it, you'll find me, and I've got all these side projects running, like my weekly newsletter. And if you just look up my name on TED.com, you'll see my TED talk that I did about social media. That was just over a year ago that it came out online.
That's a very good listen. I would recommend. No, but it really is. It's a real eye-opener into the world of trolls and bots.
Yes, yeah. I think
how to squash them.
Social media is a force for good, but it's harmful as well. And my talk is all about being aware of the dark so that you can aim for the light, and for us all to educate ourselves, because the governments and the lawmakers, they won't keep up. And you'll go in a Clubhouse chat and you could get trolled. You could get abuse hurled at you on Twitter or Facebook Live. And a lot of the people that follow you might not even be real. They're there to promote the actions of a politician somewhere in the world who's paid them to be there. So much terrible stuff happening, but I think more good. And that was kind of the thought behind the talk that I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to put on.
I would love to say the hugest of thank yous, Drew. I have been so excited to get hold of you, to chat with you and hear your gems. What you've achieved is incredible, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And so, yeah, just a massive, massive thank you.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure, Amelia. It's been lovely chatting over some peanut butter chocolates, and thank you so much for having me on.
Anyway, before I go, it's time for my book recommendation and quote for this episode. So the book is called Chatter, The Voice in Our Head and How to Harness It, by the award-winning professor of the University of Michigan and an expert on controlling the unconscious mind, Ethan Kross. I heard Ethan talk at the How To Academy, and he's just fascinating, and his book is so interesting. You will learn loads, including the why to Nadal's numerous idiosyncratic mannerisms when he plays a tennis match. So I really recommend it. And the quote is, "Laughter is an instant vacation," by Milton Berle. A huge thank you for finding the show. I hope you enjoyed the chat. Don't forget, to get the latest episode, you need to follow Hope and Patience. And if you're enjoying the show, it would be truly fab if you could rate and review it, or better still, share it with folk who may value a gem or two. Any book recommendations, quotes, songs can be found in the show notes and on the website too. Don't forget to let me know what you'd like to hear more of, less of, and also none of. So until the next time, however tough these times get, keep that very special inner sparkle you have shining.
Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope. Join the conversation at hopeandpatience.co.uk, Find Amelia on Facebook at Hope and Patience or on Twitter and Instagram at Amelia_Rope.